Gia Cordia. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Fireside Chat brought to you by the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. So this is Fireside Chat 66. So good morning to you, good evening to you, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, or if you're watching a recording of this conversation. So just let me know where you're from. I see, hello from Icebound, Texas. You know, it's 12 degrees here in Ireland. It's very, very mild. Hi, Lynn and John, Fard Namurkin, Stephanie from freezing Utah, Washington, Ulster, Berkeley, California, or you could say call it Berkeley, okay, Edinburgh, Scotland, lovely, New Hampshire. Lovely to see you all. And we've got London, Immalt blessings, Julia, that's lovely. And Immalt blessings to you all. I hope you've enjoyed, well, here in Ireland, it's the beginning of spring. The 1st of February is spring. And it's really interesting. We have we do a little bit of weather divination on the 1st of February. If it's fine and the temperatures are up, it means An Gaelic has gone out collecting firewood because she knows it's going to be cold. Again, we're going to have another cold spell where if it's very, very cold, it means that she's asleep and still hibernating. So it's mild at this point. So maybe we'll expect colder weather in the weeks ahead. Anyway, just lovely to see you all. And let's see who else. Edinburgh, Utah, lovely. Ballina, hi Alan. Killaloe, that's Killaloe, Tipperary, New York. The Swiss mountains, beautiful. Northamptonshire, Montreal, Switzerland again. Snowy Michigan. Germany, lovely to see you. Stroud, Glastonbury, Virginia, Cornwall, lovely. South coast of England, London, very mild in London too. Okay, wonderful to see you all. Near Los Angeles. Well, my guest this evening, we're going to Oxford this evening, and I introduce my guest is Austen Fisher. Now, Austen, we know you're in Oxford, but judging by your accent that we'll now hear, that we know you're not from Oxford. Anyway, you're really, really welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, you're in Oxford, but where are you from originally? I mean, where do you normally live, or where are you a resident of? Or
home is Portland, Oregon. That's where I would say home is. But I was born in Colorado and moved around a lot, but eventually kind of settled in Southern California for my childhood, and then slowly started working my way up north as I got older. And I moved to Oregon to do my undergraduate studies about 13 years ago, and that's home. But I've been in Oxford since the fall of 2019.
Okay, I've never been to Portland or Oregon, but I was really surprised to hear that you get a lot of rainfall there.
Oh yeah, a lot of rain, but I love it. It keeps everything really green and fresh, and I love that thick, moist air, and also a lot of snow in the winter, which I love because I'm a big snowboarder. So it's a good place if you love the outdoors and good beer.
Lovely. So what's the landscape like there? So lots of forests, or what's it like in Portland?
It's really interesting. So it's a really unique bioregion of North America. It's called Cascadia. It's the Cascade Mountain Ranges run from like Southern Oregon up through British Columbia, Canada, from Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. And to the east, you have like a lot of like plains and desert. And then to the west, you have, the forests and the rivers, and of course the ocean, the beautiful coast. And then they're just separated by these enormous mountains. So it's a really unique bioregion, but it's also a really unique cultural region too. I feel like it's a lot of very progressive part of the world, and people as a whole are really friendly. Everything outdoors. It's a really wonderful place to live, and absolutely love just the nature out there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Jane says she had ancestors from Wales that went to Oregon. Sounds and does look lovely. So you seem to have just such a range of landscapes in the one state. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay, so and now you're in Oxford. So before you get to why you're in Oxford, but what was the jump like from the landscape in Oregon to the landscape in Oxford, and I suppose around Oxford? What's that been like for you?
Well, it's strange because I feel like the weather's kind of the same. You get the 4 seasons and a lot of rain, but what's different out here is it's very, very flat, which I'm not used to, and it's a very strange feeling to just be somewhere where you can just kind of see forever. Just like this endless seeing, which I didn't realize made me feel a little strange. I like to feel like I can disappear into mountains and these big coniferous trees. So it's been a change, but of course you have all this history and, you know, stone circles and all this stuff that you just don't have out in the States. So it's been a change, but I love being here. All my ancestry is rooted in Britain and Ireland. So yeah, it was a big change, but it took some getting used to, but I know I'm really enjoying it here.
Okay, wonderful. So what brings you to Oxford?
I got into graduate studies at Oxford, and I guess when I got that letter, and I knew I could realize I could make it happen, I couldn't really turn that down. So yeah, I did a 1-year master's program in social anthropology in 2019, and then now I'm doing my doctorate. So I'll be here for another 3 years.
Okay. So, and we're going to come back to that later as well. So, how did you, I suppose, in terms of your background, and how did you, from whatever background you came, I suppose, what is your background like? Family, and then how did you come into Druidry, or how did you find it?
Yeah, that's an interesting story, I guess. It's a really long one too. I mean,
A few hours. Okay.
yeah, I know, we got some time. Yeah, my parents separated when I was like around 4, and my mom moved to LA to be an actress after my dad got custody of me, and so he moved around a lot for work. And I would go out and visit my mom in Southern California, and eventually ended up living with her. But ever since I was little, I just was really drawn to the Celtic aesthetic, any kind of music or art, the knot work. There's this one song by the country artist Garth Brooks called Ireland. And I remember hearing that when I was little, and I would just scream the chorus just like randomly and be really into that song, like Ireland, I am coming home. And I just remember my parents being a little like, they knew we had some ancestry there, but they weren't, you know, they didn't really understand why I was so gung-ho about all this Celtic stuff. And I guess as I got older, I had a lot of loss on my mom's side of the family. There was a lot of mental health stuff. My mom's parents died in a plane crash when I was 4, and my mom's sister committed suicide shortly after that, along with several cousins and other family members. And it started becoming obvious as I got a little older that I was having some of those same symptoms, and my mom was very worried that I would, you know, follow in those footsteps. And at that time, I'm an only child, so I was her like only family member. So she really wanted to get me help. You know, I was having a lot of like just being very sensitive, emotional, and hearing voices and having visions and things like that. A lot of visionary experiences and stuff when I was little. So with that, my mom tried to get me into Western medicine and healthcare, you know, and to see a psychologist and psychiatric hospitals and all the medications. But it just seemed to kind of get progressively worse as I got older. Eventually, I started getting the ECT, the electroconvulsive therapy treatments when I was a teenager. Nothing really seemed to help. And when I was around 18 or 19, as kind of like a last ditch like effort, I tried something very different. I tried to go to some, I guess, some indigenous healers, some other, very, very different than Western medicine. It was the first time I guess, long story short, I had some really significant experiences in these places, and a lot of healing was done. I just very quickly, within a few weeks' time, some really noticeable changes just started happening. And for the first time in my life, I could kind of think, and I'm like, oh, and it was just, was like just a complete change. And that really opened my eyes to other ways of being and other ways of knowing and engaging with the world. And that is kind of a big turning point in my life, where, you know, I went from like a place of feeling like I was in just a constant state of needing to survive. Like, oh, everyone's just trying to keep Austen around, just keep Austen here. And then once those changes started happening, I was like, I was able to stop looking so much inside and start to direct my gaze outward, and like, wow, now I'm here, and I can be here, and maybe I can do this, and well, then what am I going to do with my life? So that kind of also sent me on a journey. I worked as a street performer doing like circus arts, fire performance, fire breathing, fire eating, and fire spinning. Traveled up and down the East Coast, kind of living out of my car, doing that kind of life. Got really into mixed martial arts for a while, for several years, living out of my car, and that was also very healing for me. Just felt like it was working some tension and stuff out of my body that had built up over time. And then one day I woke up with the idea that, maybe I want to go to college. I didn't really know what to do with my life, but I knew that my parents would support me if I said, hey, I want to go to college. They'd be like, yeah, sure. And I was kind of tired of sleeping in my car. It was not one that you could put the seats down all the way. I was just putting my seat back at night to go to sleep. So a couple of years of that kind of wore me out. So I was ready for like a bed and something different. And I moved up to Oregon to do a major at Southern Oregon University in outdoor adventure leadership, because I know I love the outdoors and I loved being in nature. When I was a kid and I was, having my struggles, my mom would always take me camping. And that was the only thing that really seemed to calm me down, was to get me out in the woods. So I figured I could do that with my life. I thought I was a complete idiot. I had some shaming experiences with teachers pulling me up in front of class when I was younger. And I moved around and was in a special kids kind of classroom. And whenever I handed something in, on the rare occasion that I did, it'd always be an A. But I always figured, oh, they're just being nice to me. They know I have these challenges, and they're just trying to keep me going. There's nothing special about anything I'm doing. And then after starting college at the age of 22 and starting to hand stuff in, it was just, again, A on everything. And I had professors asking if they could use my work as examples for classes and if I could be a TA. And I eventually wound up graduating with the highest honors that you can graduate with in the States, and won the Outstanding Senior Award in both of my majors, and which sounds all really great and was, but it kind of triggered this crazy identity crisis in me, because I'm like, oh gosh, now I'm not an idiot. Maybe I'm actually good at thinking about things and putting arguments together, and very good at writing for some reason. I don't know why I have that gift. But this also kind of set me on a thing. Okay, now I need to kind of put the pieces of myself together. And during my time in undergraduate, I eventually changed my major from outdoor adventure leadership to anthropology, because I was really interested in the idea of the other. I think that came from being very interested in the otherness within myself, the parts and my experience of being othered. I always felt like, I was othered. I at one point had a necklace that I wore when I was a teenager with, my medical information on it, and the phone number to call if someone caught me having an episode, so that they could get me help. And, my nickname was Crazy. People would just be like, oh, hey, Crazy. And so that was me. And it was a very different experience. So I was very interested in the idea of the other. And so, yeah, I took an interest in anthropology. And when I graduated, I really wanted to, of course, put all those pieces of myself back together and feel like I was on solid footing. And that took me, I spent a season in Thailand teaching scuba diving. I worked as a forest field instructor at the outdoor school in Oregon, where I taught like forest ecology, and performed doing my fire stuff at Campfire. I worked at a place called Trackers Earth in Oregon, which I worked for the Rangers camp. So that was all archery, bushcraft, tracking, trap making, plant identification, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I also taught snowboarding on Mount Hood. And so I was just doing all these outdoor things and starting to travel, but at the same time having this really severe identity crisis and anxiety. When I was younger, in my teenage years, I thought I was always came across as very charismatic and confident, but I realized that was kind of due to mania. And so as those symptoms started going away, I realized, oh my gosh, that's not actually me. I'm actually a very like introverted person. So I kind of had to relearn how to engage with others and engage with the world and just be a human. And eventually this took me through a weird trail of synchronicities. I was actually trying to go on a backpacking trip in South America to do my scuba diving instructor course. So I thought that was going to be what I do with my life. Oh, I'll teach scuba diving. That's fun. And just amazing experience scuba diving. And yeah, through this weird trail of synchronicities, the airline lost my bag. I met a guy from Ireland at a hostel. We went on this big adventure, and he told me that he was going to stay with the Shipibo family who do the ayahuasca work with ayahuasca. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Maybe I'll check it out. And then something else happened, and I couldn't get on the bus to go to there was a landslide or something. I couldn't go to the next thing I needed. But I could get on the bus to go in his direction. So eventually I went and I ended up in the jungle in the Amazon with a family of Shipibo healers and I spent like 4 or 5 months working with ayahuasca and other plant medicines, doing dietas where you diet a specific plant for like a period of time, fasting in isolation in the woods, and you come back and do another ceremony with ayahuasca. And I mean, so many crazy experiences there, but I guess, yeah, long story short, like I found my footing. I kind of got exactly what I needed out of that experience. And I had met the person who would go on to be my wife shortly before that trip. And she was writing love letters to me the whole time. We were writing love letters back and forth. Yeah, and so I came back to the States and just felt like a very different person and had this wonderful, healthy relationship. And, you know, this whole time through this stuff, I continued to take an increasing interest in my ancestry, and got the DNA test, and 100% Northwestern European, with most of that being British and Irish. Can actually trace someone from my maternal line to a woman that was found in a grave up in Scotland from like the remains of like a woman that lived like almost 5,000 years ago. And I kept coming back to looking at Druid and exploring Druidry. And then when I was in the jungle with the healers working with ayahuasca, I had a Kindle, I'd read books on it. And in my recommended reading, I had the first book that popped up was The Druid Shaman by Daniel Forrest and all these others. So I just started reading about Druidry and then the ancestry. And I kept looking at OBOD and I was like, really like to join that, but I don't have a lot of money to get things shipped from the States from the UK, but maybe someday. And then my wife encouraged me to apply for graduate school after some other interesting experiences that also kind of led me to apply, and ended up getting accepted to Oxford and a lot of other places that I applied to. And so came out here, and then COVID happened and I was stuck, and I remembered, oh yeah, what was that OBOD I said I would join if I ever found myself like in the UK? And so I joined OBOD during the first lockdown and have just been all about Druidry since. So yeah, that's kind of a short version of a very long story.
That's wonderful, because earlier on there were some questions, what kind of Indigenous healing that you have. There are a number of people who have children with a similar story to you. So that was the only Indigenous. It was what you had in the Amazon was the Indigenous healing. Did you have anything else apart from ayahuasca?
Yeah, I did do like with some like kind of faith energy healers in Brazil when I was 19. That was the first big one that really I felt like. Because when I was younger, I used to have dissociative episodes. I'd get really manic, or I'd get really depressed, or mixed states. And at the extremes, I would dissociate, and I think I could do things that I couldn't when I was manic. I used to have like supervisors that would like come and babysit for me even when I was 15, because I would have these episodes and do really, dangerous things, juggling knives or whatever. I feel bad for everyone. They were not paid nearly enough to look out for me when I was in that place. But yeah, but after the first kind of going to Brazil and doing that energy work, that was when I ever since I have not had a dissociative episode. That's where that just completely stopped. Yeah, that they told me while I was there that yeah, that I mean, I don't know what to make of this. I haven't like invested energy in it really, but they're like, yeah, there are, you know, other entities or things out there, and they like to prey on the psychologically vulnerable. So when you're in these extreme states, you kind of open yourself up to other things coming in, and this is what's been going on with you. So you need to take care of yourself to make sure that you don't open yourself up to these other things. And I was told something similar when I was in working with the ayahuasca as well. So you know, I do some like rituals and kind of protection work around that. But yeah, I that was my first experiences was with the energy healers when I was 19 in Brazil, and then the ayahuasca stuff happened when I was 26.
Okay, with very, very ethical, safe, well experienced shaman.
Yes, yes, definitely, and that's a big thing that people have to be aware of too. Is, you know, there's lots of things with that, the spiritual kind of tourism of
Yeah.
ayahuasca, which I didn't know about. I didn't go down there planning to do it, so it was kind of a spur of the moment like decision. But yeah, it's I mean it's kind of endangered the plant. It's put all the other animals in danger. People have been like, oh, I can capitalize on this and
Yeah.
bringing all these kind of Westerners down, but they're not actually they don't have any experience, and you know, there's a lot of abuse and things that happen. But you know, I was with someone I trusted who seemed to know these people and do the research, and I took my time to get to know them first. And yeah, no, I had a really wonderful experience there, and yeah, that the family knew what they were doing and come from a long line, and I could tell that, and yeah, I mean, I pointed some other people in their direction who I know have had really good experiences. So yeah, it was definitely really healing for me. But there is a dark side to that too that people
Mhm.
should be aware of.
Well, if anything has the power to do good, it also has the power to do harm. So it's about no matter what, and it's about doing it in the being in the right hands. Um, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of great response to your openness, telling your story.
Mhm.
And uh, I mean, it's lovely to hear that you haven't had one of those dissociative episodes
Mhm.
since you've had that healing. What do you do now to maintain your mental health now?
Well, it's really it's interesting again because I feel like even looking back on because I've worked for the National Alliance on Mental Illness in the States as an in our own voice advocate. So I've done a lot of advocacy work where I share my story and you know whether it's to you know law enforcement or you know medical professionals, and I've also done a lot of mentoring with at-risk youth who are struggling with similar things. But I found that as I've just continued to grow as a person, it's harder and harder to put myself back in like my old shoes. It just feels like completely different people looking back on those memories. And I honestly I wouldn't even know what to say to myself if I were to be able to go back in time and try to be a mentor to myself. I think I was just kind of yeah, I was just in a very different place. So even you know the things I had to try to do then to maintain myself in some way are very different than now. And I mean now I exercise a lot, I get outside regularly, um, and yeah, I have a wonderful wife that supports me, and my mother and father, I have a great relationship with him. And just a very supportive friends and family, and I'm just very self-aware. I know when something's not feeling right. I know when I need to focus more on self-care, or when I need to step away or take a break, or if I need to ask for extra support. um, that's a benefit, I guess, of seeing like I've probably seen a psychologist maybe once a week on average from the age of 4 to 26. And when I have all their voices in my head, I feel like when I'm struggling or having a problem, like, what would Dr. So and so say? What would Dr. So and so say? And I don't know. It's really easy. I feel like these days to kind of come back to center. But I also, you know, I have a daily practice. I meditate every single day for at least 20 minutes. Sometimes I can get lost in it, and it can go on for several hours.
Wow.
I do uh, rituals. I know the Sacred Grove, Light Body,
Yeah,
My
yeah.
Ideal Day. I run through all of those, and but I don't have that same fear. I'm not afraid anymore of those things coming back and bothering me. They just no longer a part of me. They don't feel like an issue. I feel like I'd really have to try and get myself in a really bad place for an extended period of time and not take my care of myself to even have any of those kinds of issues again. It really does feel like a living just in a complete as a completely different person.
Wow. I mean, that's such an amazing story. And I suppose what strikes me is your level of self-awareness so that you're able to observe yourself and know and listen to your body and be really in tune and know when you need to get help, which I think is really important for all of us, is to be able to be so aware of what our needs are. If it's, I need a drink of water now, or I need to sleep, or I need to take time out, or you know what, these things are coming back, or some, I need to talk to somebody, I need to ask for help, which is, these are such signs of health to
Yes,
ask,
yeah,
to be aware of it and to be able to ask for help when you need it. And it's lovely to hear that you know that no longer afraid of any of that, because I'm sure uh, some of it must have been so nightmarish for you, you know, and to be able to
yeah,
come.
yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, yeah, to look back and just have those memories and those kinds of things. Definitely feel like there's been some trauma there, which is I've been able to relieve through martial arts and other things, and but yeah, it was wow, it was just felt like I was in a hurricane. It felt like my mom and I always just joke, looking back, it was just her and I like kind of holding each other, screaming in this crazy storm, just hoping we'd come out the other side, and here we are. So all is wonderful now. I have no complaints. I love my life.
That's brilliant, absolutely wonderful. So there's lots of responses. Bravo, keep up your good work, wonderful. So
Thank you.
and there are people who've experienced similar things to you as well. So
I
uh,
think that's common among druids. The more I talk to people in druidry, the more they've had many similar experiences, which has been really interesting to just notice that.
yeah, and I don't think that druids are any more or any less mentally healthy than other people, but I think that there's an openness about it, or maybe that ability
Yeah.
to be open, because as well as it being a spiritual path, it's also a personal development path.
Mhm.
So, and I think there's that welcome for people with all our craziness and all our idiosyncrasies and all our woundedness, that there's a place for us to be able to explore, and hence that space to be open. And I mean, the more
Definitely.
open you can be about how you are, and to have people that you can safely do that, I think the healthier the world is. And this is what community is about: is to be
Mhm.
able to, I suppose, be who you are and get the support that you need. And often it's just somebody being with you, or acknowledging it, or, you know, I've had a similar story,
Mhm.
something like that. Yeah.
Definitely, and it's interesting too because the world today doesn't really seem to foster those connections. We're very connected in the sense we all have smartphones and we can get next day delivery on toilet paper rolls if we run out. It's an amazing world we live in, and we're very connected in a lot of ways. But I feel like through establishing those connections, we become disconnected from other things in other ways. And so, yeah, I think it can be a struggle to develop those skills and find those communities because again the world today just doesn't seem to foster that.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. Uh, I remember having come across this cartoon, two dolphins talking to each other. Um, Humans have the gift of speech, but there is no evidence that they actually communicate.
I
so,
like that.
so yes, and I think particularly now there's a huge call on us to be there and more supportive and to show kindness and compassion.
Mhm.
Uh, so, what's it like in Oxford? And would you like to talk about your doctoral program and what it is you're doing?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it was a lot coming from straight outdoor jobs to graduate school at Oxford, especially in the humanities, social sciences and humanities, where you have to read a lot. I'm not a very good, reading is a challenge for me. I've
Okay.
met so many people here who are just like, oh, I just can't wait to go home and like crush these 3 books. I'm like, how do you, I'm standing there with one article, like pacing back and forth in my kitchen sometimes with my finger under the line, reading out loud, trying to get it all. Reading is a lot for me. So that was pretty intense coming and doing a 1 year master's program, and all the reading that came along with it. I try to do the math, and I don't think it's possible for you to read everything word for word and like actually be a human in other areas throughout your day. It just was so much reading. So that was a lot, and there's a lot of um, I'm a very like open sharing, like person, and I'm always happy to like really help others, and like so I'm all about like, hey, sharing notes, and like let's meet after and discuss things, and like let's help each other out. And coming to the masters, it felt like very much like every person for themselves kind of mentality, which really kind of turned me off like a little bit. It's very different in the doctoral program. I have a lot of really great people, and we're always checking in with each other. But yeah, it was definitely a different world. I felt like I got thrust into, and to fall back into the rhythm of reading and writing was very, very stressful, and definitely tested my like ability to self-care and find balance. But when it came time to write my like master's thesis, just 10,000 words, you know, of course, what's really of interest to me is self-transformation. How do people transform themselves? How do they grow and change? And how does that happen just, you know, at the level of the individual, but also how does that translate to the level of the community, whether it's your local community, global community. So with all the COVID craziness and everything too, I looked at self-transformation within an online online fantasy role-playing game called The Elder Scrolls Online. I love video games. They were the only thing when I was a kid that felt like it gave me a sense of control. If I was upset because I was losing at a level, or, you know, I understood why I was upset, and I could hyper-focus on video games really well, and to the point where I just didn't hear anything else that was going on around me. So video games have always been kind of a source of peace for me. So I was really interested in exploring this fantasy world, and I was looking at self-transformation within that. So that was kind of my master's thesis, and that's when I joined OBOD. So something very different. And then usually at Oxford, if you're doing a 1-year master's, you'll switch to a 2-year, what's called an MPhil, if you want to go on to a doctorate, because it's easier to make the transition. You don't need as high of a grade to go straight from the MSc to the DPhil, they call it. You have to have a much higher grade, and I was thankfully able to get that grade and go on straight to the doctoral program, which was great too, because then I got to kind of I got to do a little bit of a different topic. Whereas if you switch to the MPhil, it's the doctoral thesis is an extension of the MPhil thesis, if that makes sense. So I went from self-transformation in online role-playing games to self-transformation within Druidry. So originally I was just going to look at, for my doctoral thesis, self-transformation, looking at a mental health group in Oxford. But then because of COVID, my supervisor was asking me, you know, what have you been doing to take care of yourself? You know, I don't think we can go through this other plan. And I was like, oh, I've been doing this and this and this. Oh, and I joined this order of bards, ovates, and druids. And she's like, oh, would you want to make that like the focus of your thesis? And I was like, can I do that? Is that allowed? And she was super supportive of it. I know she's Swiss Chinese and has been very interested in the druids since coming here and walking the Ridgeway and all these other sites. So I know she was very excited to have me also be into Druidry. So yeah, so now I'm exploring self-transformation, but within Druidry. So how are people engaging with Druidry, and does that lead to any kind of self-transformation? If so, what does that look like, and why is it happening? So yeah, that's kind of the gist of what I'm looking at right now.
Oh wow! So have you got a sample? What's your? Are you?
Yeah, it's. Well, I'm in my fieldwork year now, so I'm an anthropologist. So we have a fieldwork year. So the first year of the doctoral program, you write what's called a PRS paper. It's probationary research student, because you're not yet officially a doctoral student. So you have to write this like 20,000 word paper outlining your project and outlining, you know, everything, making sure, and you submit it, and then you have a viva where you get assessed by these assessors, and they kind of critique it, everything. And so I've done that, and I got approved. And I submitted my PRS actually to OBOD to apply for their scholarship, which I'm very grateful to. They gave me the scholarship, like, yeah, go ahead. So I'm like, yes. So I have the support of OBOD going into my field work. They've seen my PRS. I'm happy to share it with anyone who's interested, and if you want to get a better understanding of my research. But now it's just field work where I'm, you know, as an anthropologist, having to just go out and meet with other druids, hang out with druids. I mean, engage with it myself. A big part of it's autoethnography. So my own experience, with it, but also just getting to know other druids and what druidry looks like in their life and how does transform them and what transformation looks like in their life.
So, and how do you find your subjects? How do you find people to participate?
Well, it's actually been a real challenge because of COVID. Well, one, I think no one, if you get an email from an academic being like, hey, you want to tell me about your spirituality? Like, no, they're like, no, academia, and it's understandably so, academia hasn't traditionally been very kind to ideas of spirituality or people who consider themselves spiritual. They always try to rationalize everything and dismiss this or that. And that's a problem with academia, not a problem with spirituality. Academia is the one that needs to change, and I'm hoping to be a part of that conversation. So it's been hard because usually I would, with COVID, the in-person gatherings have not happened. So usually I'd go in person and I'd talk to people, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, you're not so bad. You can hang out with me." And then we hang out, and they're like, "Okay, yeah, you're cool. I'll point you to these other druids I know," and it kind of snowballs from there. But because COVID has led to the cancellation of all these in-person events, it's been really hard to actually find participants and make that happen. It's starting to pick up now because I actually had an experience out at Avebury. I went camping at Avebury in the middle of January and woke up to ice all around my tent. But while being cold in my sleeping bag, I just had to I just got struck with you just need to email everyone directly. So I started I've already listened to so many of the Fireside Chats. I love them. But I started emailing people from Fireside Chat being like, hey, would you want to talk? Here's me, here's my stuff. And I actually got a lot of responses. So now things are starting to pick up more and I have more people interested. So this is really great. So my schedule's starting to fill up now.
Wonderful. Tara McCormick, she is happy to be a volunteer. Ma Ray do you take academic bards from Germany via Zoom is another question. Deborah, it's good to put a face. Obviously you must have been, she said it's good to put a face to an email. So she's obviously in your study. So if there's people here who'd like to take part, how do they contact you?
Yeah, I don't know if I could put my email in a chat or
I'll do it.
It's I guess my student email. It's Austen. It's AUSTEN. So yeah, AUSTEN .Fisher FISHER at gtc.ox.ac.uk.
Okay, Austen.Fisher at gtc.ox.ac.uk.
Yep, gtc.ox.ac.uk. I'm with GTC is for Green Templeton College, which is the college I'm with.
Okay, well, I've just put that in the chat, so that should go into all channels. Let me see. It'll take a while. So, great. So, okay, that's gone there. Great.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, please. I'd love to hear from anyone, whether it's just for a Zoom interview or just talk or a walk and talk around a landscape that you enjoy, anything. I'd love to just talk.
And you have a whole year to do your field work as well.
Yeah, officially supposed to end in September, but my friends, they joke that my life is my field work, which is actually kind of newer thinking in anthropology. Is anthropology as a vocation? It's something you pick up. So I'm the guy now that shows up with a tin whistle and tries to learn stories of all the places so I can tell my friends places, or tell my friends stories when we go to places and things like that. So yeah, it's yeah, I think it's, for me, it's my life. Anthropology is an everyday thing.
Okay. So Diana has a question. How do we get access to the research you have already done? I take it if you email.
Yeah, if you email me, I'm happy to send you. What I've done. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So you it's interesting, that you were talking about doing your DNA or your Irish English ancestry. How do you honor your ancestors, or what was it like when what was your notion of ancestors before you did that?
It's a good question. Yeah, my notion of ancestors. Yeah. Uh, I don't think I really, you know, I don't feel like I really had one. I think I remember getting, and my dad's mom's dad was a pilot who went down in the Bermuda Triangle when I and before my grandmother was born. And I remember being really into the Bermuda Triangle at some point in time. So that story fascinated me. And I think I got more into looking at kind of my ancestors there, but just like more like close ancestors and what it was like when they were kids. And I think there was like a picture of my great grandma running around a farm in the States with the hoop and the stick. It blows my mind that that was once like a form of entertainment that satisfied children, a hoop and a stick. Um,
I
yeah,
remember
very,
the
yeah.
wheels without the tire, just the bare wheels. Yes.
Yeah, it's yeah. Now everyone, it's like if they don't have an iPad in their hands, they seem to lose their mind. So yeah, so I think that kind of sparked my interest, but then wanting something to go deeper and wanting to just know more about my roots. I think being from the States, I've heard people say that like Americans are people without roots, which I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, you walk around the landscape here, you can see, you know, like these megaliths, all these things that if you have ancestry here, you can probably bet that your ancestors at some point, one of your ancestors walked by the same stone or put their hand on it or something, and that's something that unless you're like an indigenous American, you don't have in the States. And I feel like there's something has been lost there, and so there's just yeah a feeling of disconnection and or just a lack of that connection there, and so wanting to establish that connection is what I guess got me interested in it, and I guess viewing my view of ancestors kind of then changed to cool things my great grandparents did to like where are my roots, wanting to know where my like roots were. um, and yeah, with all the obsession with everything Celtic and stuff too, it really got me curious. When I started learning guitar, I could play like Celtic folk tunes and sing and play with them faster than I would be able to do something like with Nirvana or the Red Hot Chili Peppers or music I actually listen to on the day to day. And that was, I don't know why that is, but that got me curious too. So yeah, just doing that, and then I eventually got the DNA test, and yeah, of course, wasn't surprised with all the results. But so now I'm very into ancestry, and I guess when it comes to honoring my ancestors, one knowing that one of like someone from my maternal line was discovered up in Scotland in a cairn. I really want to go up to that cairn and visit that cairn and camp out near the cairn and do a ritual and just do something to honor an ancestor that's been there. So I guess there's like a kind of a ritualistic, like a taking the time to really take a moment and just be thankful, that they lived their lives so that you could live yours. I think whether that's through ritual or prayer or just sitting and being present in the same landscapes, those are all things I like to do. And then I guess also I can honor the ancestors by trying to make the best with the gifts that I've been given. I mean, I didn't choose my parents or the situation that I was born into. No one does. I think all we can really do is make the best of what we have. So I've been trying to do that in my life, and so I think that's the way that I try to honor my ancestors as well, and hopefully leave the world a little bit better than I found it, so that I can maybe someday be an ancestor that someone wants to look back on and honor.
Well, lovely, lovely. So when you're in Oxford now, I mean, here, how do you connect? Pat has a question because Pat's a graduate. She was in Oxford. Which parts of natural Oxford have you been enjoying? Have you wandered around Port Meadow or taken a punt out on the river?
Yes, yeah. I wish it was light out. I would try to show you, but I live in those big ugly graduate accommodation buildings that everyone was upset about that they built overlooking Port Meadow. So I'm on the fourth floor, the highest floor, and my living room looks out over Port Meadow. So I always wake up and get my tea, and I just kind of breathe in Port Meadow, and I can watch the sunset over Port Meadow. So I spend a lot of time walking through Port Meadow, and I also there's an allotment sites right below, and my wife and I got an allotment and started growing things there. And then, gosh, what else do I do? I went up to see the Headington Morris like mummers play. I know that's not natural, but that's like a historic thing that I thought was really cool. and there's the C.S. Lewis Park up there, and Shotover Park. So I kind of go everywhere. And then the more stories I seem to learn about Oxford, I spent time with a druid, Chris Park, spending some time with him. He's amazing, and he knows all the stories of like everything. And he told me the story of from the Mabinogi of is it Lud and Levelus is the three plagues of Britain, and how the energetic center was found to be Oxford. And it's at this one kind of crossroad that I would always avoid because there's so many people walking through there all the time. It's kind of a little bit energetically overwhelming. But now that I've been there with him, and I know that's that story, I kind of make a point to go out of my way and experience that, because it makes sense why there's so many people here. It's the energetic center of Britain. So learning stories and then finding a way to kind of engage and connect. I think learning stories for me, I realize, really deepens your experience of the landscape. So I've been learning a lot of stories so that I can deepen those experiences and enjoy kind of the landscapes at a deeper level.
Wonderful. John King, who's in Scotland. What cairn in Scotland is your ancestor that was found?
Her name was Ava. So I think if you put like Ava, like AVA Grave Scotland into Google, there would be you'll probably find something up. I'm trying to remember the name of the grave. I think it was up near Orkney that they found the grave, and they originally had it depicted it as this woman with all this red hair. Then after some more DNA testing, they like kind of redid her images with someone with black hair and brown eyes. So if you put in Ava Grave Scotland, you should probably pull up several articles that are talking about that.
It's in Orkney or on the mainland?
I think it's on the mainland next to it. It's the my wife just handed me the Auchten Fisher burial. It's ACHAVANICH Beaker burial. It refers to the remains of a prehistoric woman who lived around 4,000 years ago in the area of present-day Archivonich in Caithness, Scotland, if I'm pronouncing any of that right.
Caithness. I mean, my pronunciation isn't great. Pat Booker says Hitler wanted to make Oxford the capital of England because of Carfax.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Okay. At least that was the story every undergraduate was told, is what she's saying. And Linda says, my grandfather had an allotment at Port Meadow. And my parents are from Oxford. Yes, Oxford is the heart chakra. Lovely. So the energetic center of Britain. Beautiful. Carfax is extraordinary indeed, as is all of the old centre of the city. Yes, of course, Philip Pullman's work reveals Oxford extraordinary energies, and I loved the Dark Materials trilogy. Have you read them?
No, I haven't.
Oh my goodness!
Okay, so I'll put that in.
They did make a film. What was it? The Golden Compass, was it? They just changed. So it's the Dark Materials trilogy, but it's set in Oxford, and there's I suppose there's two dimensions, and in Oxford they both look the same, but they're different. And I remember I think it was the second book, The Subtle Knife, where with a knife you could cut through the veil and go into the other one. I won't spoil it. Just Philip Pullman is a wonderful writer.
Yeah, I'll check it out for sure.
Is the heroine just beautiful?
Awesome.
Okay, so it's Auchivonich in Caithness. That's what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Forgive my pronunciation too. So Francis says, I can relate, Austen. I came to Finland in 2004 and have been working with the Sami indigenous people in northern Fennoscandia. Also work now as an anthropologist in Lapland, writing and publishing material about the Sami beliefs, traditions and practices through cooperation with the elders. Completed my doctorate in 2018 at the University of Lapland. You have a great story to tell, and I'm grateful to listen to your journey.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That's awesome. I'd love to read some of your work as well. That sounds amazing.
So Pat says, get a good audiobook of the Dark Materials trilogy. And then BBC Player has Dark Materials showing. Oh my, you're getting loads of answers. And then she says, this is Pat, because Pat's a real Oxfordtonian. And C.S. Lewis and Tolkien used to go for drinks with other members of the Inklings in the Lamb and Flag, if that is still open. Do you know that pub?
It's closed, but I was fortunate to get some drinks there before they closed it. I know there's like an Oxford pub crawl that they have on like posters here that you have to, everyone tries to hit. And now that that's closed, no
Forever.
one's going to be able to do it. But yeah, but I'm still like in the running to make all that happen. So I think I just have a few more pubs to cross off.
Oh, she said no, sadness. Okay. So, so how would you say, to come back to Druidry, how it supported you? I mean, you joined in 2019, so it's you're still new into the order, but are there any ways in which, I mean, you've really spoken about your previous experiences in South America, but since joining the order, has it in any way supported your?
Oh yeah, definitely. The first big thing that I can remember that kind of, like, I just was kind of taken aback by it was the first Samhain ceremony that I did. You open a portal. I'm trying to remember, I have it all written down. You open a portal and you kind of give over some. You can give over some sort of grief or trauma, something that's bothering you. You kind of hand it over. I don't know. I'm trying to remember all what happened, but when I was younger, I was in caring for an animal, and through my inability to like care for it, it died when I was a teenager, and this animal died, and I was responsible for it. And I love animals more than anything else. I mean, more than people, I just always want to be with animals. So that was like something that like a trauma that I had. I would get to like kind of flashbacks of walking in, like seeing this animal being dead, realizing that was my fault, and like it would, I'd just break down into tears. It just was, it happened when I was 15, and it was still bothering me like pretty significantly, like all the time, pretty regular, like every day it could come up. And I remember just during a Samhain ceremony, like giving that over, and the animal that died was a cat. It was a small cat, and out of the portal, I was just totally by surprise. The cat popped out, and it was old. It was all grown, and it just had this experience of this cat popping out of this portal at Samhain, and like I just broke down. I was just sobbing. I was just like, it was so healing. And so even though I still have those flashbacks to that moment, sometimes with them now, that grown, healthy, alive cat is there alongside that. Like, and because of that, I haven't had, I don't like break down and cry. I'm like, just like, I can take a deep breath and, recognize that happened. But I feel like, I don't know, this cat is like in the other world somewhere telling me that, okay. And in a way has become like a spirit ally or something. I have this cat now, it sounds strange, but it was this first like experience I had of Druidry, of doing one of these Wheel of the Year ceremonies. And I just had that really powerful experience. And so that's the first big thing that popped out in Druidry, where I was like, wow, that's powerful. There's something there. And then I found that actually throughout the Wheel of the Year. I think the Wheel of the Year is brilliant. I think the 8 seasonal like celebrations, they punctuate the year at the least with moments of reflection and engagement. And I think engaging with external rhythms of the world kind of can create an internal rhythm. So you always, for me at least, I kind of feel like I'm always moving forward in some way, rather than all the days blending in together. So I feel like I've gotten a lot out of the seasonal ceremonies. And then also the estefad, like the sharing of the poetry and the song, I found that to be really healing and supportive as well. And I've talked to other Druids who have said the same, where they had some poetry or songs and they were really hesitant to share them, but because of how supportive and encouraging the Druid community is, they've really developed those skills. And I'm part of a grove here in Oxford, and I remember like showing up to my first ceremony, and then the end, everyone sharing poems, and they looked at me and they're like, do you have anything you want to share? And I just had I didn't, like, no, I don't, I just had my skateboard like in my hand, and I'm like, no, and they're like, well, do you want to tell us about your skateboard? And I was just like, oh yeah, I'll tell you about my skateboard if you want to hear it. So yeah, I think it's supported me, the Wheel of the Year, the community being able to hold space, and also I think the light body and the sacred grove are really interesting meditations when you get into them. And I know my visualizations have also improved, which I see a lot of value in, being able to visualize and kind of do that path working stuff. I think path working is more of like you're kind of using, maybe it's more directed using your imagination as opposed to kind of journeying, which I feel like when I'm doing any kind of journeying work, it's a little bit more, I'm a bit more like surprised by what pops into my mind. But I know Druidry supports both of those things, but I know the journeying is probably going to come a little bit later. But just the visualizations and being able to come to that place of peace and the sacred grove. Actually, just now thinking of it, I had a moment of stress. I went to visit my family in the States, and I had a moment of stress, really intense stress, and I closed my eyes just to breathe, and immediately was in my sacred grove. And I was totally surprised by that too. And I remember going and writing that down, like, oh, I closed my eyes today, and I was just immediately in my grove. So I think that's been really helpful. I feel like Druidry is kind of providing a toolkit, if that makes sense. There's like a lot of different tools, a very kind of holistic toolkit that you can kind of utilize in a variety of ways to support yourself and others. And I'm finding that more and more as I dig into Druidry.
Yeah, Zane says, I'm happier after being introduced to the Wheel of the Year. It creates more distinct times, conditions to celebrate, and they're just long enough to cherish each one and the special aspects that each brings. I agree with you, Zane. I just love that you have these, well, say roughly 6 week chunks of the year, and that each time is like another chance to renew, or to do a check-in with yourself, or to set another intention. I always think of, January 1st, you make all these New Year's resolutions, and then by January 5th, they're all gone, and you wait another year to make them. Where with these is that just that gentle checking in with where you are, and it punctuates the year in a lovely way. I think it's and then it's a time for community, for meeting. Okay, we're now doing it physically, thank goodness, but in order, we're doing it online still. That is beautiful, and if you can do it with another, it's lovely to be able to celebrate and really tune in community.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah. So and then Alexi says, yeah, immediately get into your sacred grove is amazing and wonderful experience. I think that just to be able to do that, just with how simple it is. I don't know if it was easy at the beginning, but these when people, I imagine, struggle initially to do that, and with practice, and to be able to make that your sanctuary, I think is such a gift. And of course, you can do it because each one of us has that place within that we can go. Yeah. And you can do it anywhere. You can do it on a bus, you can do it in a train, in a lift, elevator, but wherever you are, or on your own, it's there. It's always there.
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful. I've loved everything that I found in OBOD, and just I think it has a lot of. I'm really interested in just dynamics of transformation, and like if society were to collapse someday and they were to discover like a book I wrote in the ashes, they'd look at it and be like, oh, this has some valuable stuff to like help put the world back together. And I think from what I think Druidry contains a lot of those seeds in it already. So I'm curious. I'm excited to see more people getting into Druidry, and I know that there's been just more and more interest. And I'm curious to see where that takes us all.
Yes, and speaking of more people, Poppy asks, "Is your wife also a Druid?"
She's on the path. She's going at her own pace, but yeah, she actually I think has more like British and Irish in her than I do. So yeah, she's very, very into it. Yes, we're kind of. I get to dedicate all my time to Druidry, which is a dream. This whole year, I just get everything I can do. I just drew as much Druidry as I want, and she takes good care of me and works so much, so she doesn't have as much time. But yeah, she's into it 100%.
It probably says it's good to have a partner who vibrates on the same level. I agree, and not everybody has that, but it is lovely to if both of you share the same path. Great.
Yeah, I lucked out.
So what would you say has been your greatest achievement? I mean, you've already achieved so much, in my view, but what would you say has been your greatest one, or the one you're most proud of?
Honestly, I think being able to be in such a wonderful relationship has been my greatest achievement, to be honest. I really struggled in relationships. I was like the crazy person. Like I was, the person that, people are like, oh my gosh, I'm glad that person's no longer in my life. But as I started getting better and working on myself, I started then, I feel like, bringing more and more kind of intense people who are really struggling into my life to kind of fill that void, which is really interesting to observe.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, so I used to be the really hard person to be in a relationship with because I was just all over the place.
Okay.
And then, but as I started working on myself and getting better, I started to be like the healthy person and started bringing, I guess, people who were unhealthy or struggling with where they were at into my life to kind of fill the void that was left by not
Right.
having my own stuff to deal with anymore. So yeah, it was interesting to observe that dynamic in my life. It's just as I got better, I just started bringing more and more, that kind of chaotic energy into my life through relationships. Even though I never really described myself as a relationship person, I always kind of avoided them. And then I met my wife. She was through a friend, and she was a big snowboarder too. And she was down in Southern Oregon, and I was up in Portland. And she had broken her foot or a toe or something, and so couldn't go snowboarding that whole season. But it had healed, and there was still snow on the mountain up on Mount Hood near Portland. So she asked if she could come snowboarding with me, and I said, yeah, sure. And we'd been friends for a while, and she came up, and then the mountain closed on, like got the news the mountain was closing early on our way up, so we went to like a trampoline gym instead, and bounced around. And I remember she did this really amazing. I love Spider-Man. I'm such a nerd. Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, Harry Potter. I'm just kind of a nerd through and through. And I told her, yeah, I wish I could be like Spider-Man. And she's like, it's like Spider-Man or something. And she just did this crazy trampoline, like got super high and did the most beautiful Spider-Man pose in midair. And I was just like, oh my, you are the most amazing person I feel like I've met in forever. It was, yeah. So we went back to my place and we were just talking, and she told me she liked me. And then 3 days later, I went to Peru for 5 months, and she had written those letters. So then coming back and being with her and navigating those relationships and finding myself in this wonderful, healthy relationship now where we can like come to Oxford, and every day is just wonderful, and I'm excited about it, and it's so easy to be with her, and there's no drama or stress, and we've been together for 5 years. I mean, I go away for like a day, and we miss each other a lot. So yeah, that's my greatest achievement, and honestly, is being in a healthy relationship, because I could not imagine not having that kind of support in my life now.
It's really interesting. That's so lovely. But it's really interesting how you replace the chaos in your own life by welcoming somebody else who was chaotic in. And what was it? Was it just meeting her at the right time on the right day, that she not being one of those chaotic persons, that somehow you broke that pattern? What helped you do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, that was after the ayahuasca thing and everything, or not after. That was, I guess, coming back and being in a relationship with it was after that. And I'm unsure how it would have unfolded if we had just gone into it right before then, because there was a lot that was done during that time. But I was also out of relationships for several years before meeting her. And I just think that I feel like from my experience, a lot of people are looking for wholeness in other people. And so they're searching for something outside of themselves to make themselves feel whole and feel complete and feel loved and feel, accepted and appreciated. And my experience, that you're not going to find that really need externally until you can create that for yourself internally. You're going to continue to bring the wrong people into your life. But once you can get to that point where you feel that way on your own and you've done that work, the right person is gonna be there. And yeah, so I think you just got to do that work. And I guess I'd gotten to the point where I'd done enough where the universe was just kind of like, okay, well here, try this out. And yeah, it's been great.
Oh, it's just wonderful. This is Jamie says, I suspect a lot of us are nerds. Okay, I am too. Badge of honor. Congratulations to you and your partner, Austen. Beautiful to hear a man speak this way. Bravo. And then Sarah says, how wonderfully uplifting to hear you both talk. Thank you. I would also say that your greatest achievement is being more fully you, transcending the ego. And then, of course, she came into your life. And then Hannah says, and I always got that wrong. You need to look inside. I think, Hannah, many people so many of us looking outside. And it has to come back to ourselves. And then again, that brings us back to the teachings on the course, your inner grove work. I mean, it's there in your light body, and it starts from, I assume, I can't remember, does it start from the first verse? From day one, it's back into yourself and your inner world and how you find that. Lovely. And then Poppy says, blessings to you. It sounds like healing came into your life with and for you and your wife. I would say that is the way relationships are supposed to be. Absolutely. Yes. It's okay. That is just so. Then what's the most reckless thing you've ever done?
Oh gosh, I knew that this question was coming, and it was.
I'm free to censor or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think of what would be a good one to share. Yeah, it's because it's a long list, but I think the most reckless would have to be, my wife's just over in the corner, like wondering what I'm going to share. I think I went when I was working in Thailand teaching scuba diving. It was a season, which is scuba diving. Teaching scuba diving, if you're doing it like as seasonal work, it's great because you can teach for a season, and when a season is ending somewhere, you can go somewhere else because that season is just beginning. So you can kind of travel the world, going from different place to different place, teaching scuba diving, and it's a really wonderful job. I proselytize only a few things about it, but scuba diving is one of them. I try to sell everyone on scuba diving. It's amazing. But anyways, I was teaching scuba diving, and there was a little bar that all the guys would all go to after our trips, because we would work on these 3-day live aboard trips where we'd go out for 3 days and we'd work on the boat leading scuba diving off these islands, the Simlin and Sern Islands in Thailand, and we'd come back and another crew would go out. So we'd go out to this bar, and once a week they'd have ladies' night where all the drinks were half off. And drinks there already in Thailand are very cheap. It's very cheap to buy beer there. Sometimes it can be cheaper than getting clean water, depending on where you are. We would, ladies' night's great, but of course we weren't ladies. But they did have up in the second floor, they had like a changing room where they just had a bunch of dresses that they just kept. So all the guys would go up and they'd put on a dress, and we'd be able to go down and get half off our drinks. So I remember it was maybe I hadn't been there that long, but it was my first night out. I think it was my first or second night out with these guys at this ladies' night. And everyone, I had on my dress with all the guys and was enjoying my drinks. And everyone was like, all right, we're moving on or going home. And I made the mistake of saying, you know what? No, I'm going to stay and I'm going to have another drink. I think there was pool happening. I was having a good time. But at some point, it got really late, and I decided, I don't know how to get back because, I hadn't been in Thailand that long, and I'm not good to drive or do anything. So that's okay. I've heard everyone in Thailand is really nice. I'll hitchhike. But I didn't. I forgot that I was still wearing the dress. So I remember standing out in this middle of nowhere, kind of in Thailand, this tiny little bar in my dress, trying to hitchhike. And I'll just say that it was a very long night. I got home relatively unscathed, but yeah, it was a very reckless thing. I would not do that again. But yeah, it turned into quite an adventure.
I imagine gave you insight what it's like to be a woman hitching home after a few.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would not recommend. Yeah.
Blake says, "Who doesn't love a good bit of drag?" Yes, I suppose yes when it's safe. Yes. Oh, wonderful. So, what are you grateful for in your life, Austen?
All the opportunity that I have. I'm just so grateful for opportunity to, whether it's just to study here or just be healthy, happy and healthy, and have food or pursue my hobbies. I have so many hobbies. So just the opportunity, because again, that's something I didn't choose. I'm not responsible for all these opportunities that I have. Really, I mean, I just very fortunate in how the die was rolled when I came into this world. That while some things were tough, other things have been made accessible or easy for me. So yeah, I guess opportunity is the thing I'm grateful for the most.
Wonderful. You mentioned all your hobbies, and I know you mentioned, I suppose you reading because you mentioned Harry Potter. What other you like fantasy? I take it.
Oh
Um,
yeah, my wife brought Lord of the Rings back into my life really hard. She's a huge Lord of the Rings nerd, and my mom actually was one of the first. She had a friend who worked for the publishing company that would go on to publish the first Harry Potter book, and the guy that worked for the company, who's friends with my mom, gave her the first, like a copy of Harry Potter before it was ever released, to my knowledge, in the States, thinking that I would really like it. But my mom couldn't get me to sit still long enough to read it. And then when I was in the hospital when I was a kid, she came and we would build a blanket for it during visiting hours. And she was a theater major. She did all the voices and read all the Harry Potter book to me. So that got me really into Harry Potter, yeah, and fantasy as a whole. I'm very into Marvel, all the Marvel movies. I got my wife into them. She's on board now. I feel like once you get on the Marvel hype train, because there's so many films and movies, it's really hard to get off. But as a whole, they're really good. So yeah, I'm all into Marvel and fantasy, but I also, yeah, I love skateboarding, snowboarding, scuba diving, really just board surfing. I got really good at snowboarding. I used to teach snowboarding. Snowboarding for me is one of the most magical things that there is to do in this world. Being sideways on a board, carving through trees and the snow, there's just nothing like it. It's just really a magical experience. And then scuba diving, being able to breathe underwater. It's like, I feel like the closest thing to a psychedelic trip that you can have without taking psychedelics, because you're just floating through this alien world. And teaching scuba diving, I've seen people just start crying underwater because manta rays or something will just fly over them, and it's just not an experience that we just get to have on land here. So I love scuba diving. I love snowboarding. I got back into skateboarding during the second lockdown because I couldn't snowboard, and I was very sad about it. I used to skateboard when I was a kid, but I didn't have the patience or discipline for it. And so now I have the patience and discipline, but I'm in my 30s now, and things hurt a lot faster. So I've noticed. So I mean, I'm not made of rubber anymore. So I do have that discipline. So I'm actually much better at skateboarding now than I was when I was a kid. So I spend a lot of time skateboarding. But even my skateboarding's influenced my druidry. My deck is like an elder tree themed druid deck. So, and I try to approach my skateboarding as like a ritual, like I'm going to go out and I bless my board whenever I get a new deck and do all this stuff and, go out and create this ritual space for me to skate. So yeah, I feel like even my hobbies are starting to feel like the druidry is kind of touching and affecting them in some ways. But yeah, anything outdoors, I love. I do fire eating and fire breathing as well.
And are you doing that? Obviously, because you said you brought your skateboard to your first druid ceremony when you joined the Grove. Not sure about opportunity for snowboarding in Oxford, but how much are you doing here? So there's, I've just lost it. I went on to skateboarding. What did you just say before that?
The fire breathing, the fire eating.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. Because I had thought of it earlier. Oh, you can't do a demonstration here because we won't see much on the screen. We won't get the magic of it. But are you doing much fire breathing work here or there in
Well,
Oxford?
I will be doing some maybe soon at my college's ball. I kind of accidentally got myself elected as president of my college's ball back in 2019. I originally emailed the former president of the ball because they sent out an email being like, we're looking for people to help put together next year's ball. And I sent an email being like, well, I'd love to do fire performance at the ball. So, let me know when they get the ball going, and I'll come perform and do my fire eating and breathing. And he's like, that'd be great. But unfortunately, we haven't had anyone communicate interest in being the president of the ball committee. And I made the mistake of saying, well, if no one else is interested, if you can't find anyone else interested, I'll do it. And then, sure enough, a few days later, I got an email being like, congratulations, you're the president of the ball. But then because of COVID, it got canceled several times. So I'm still the president of the ball. But with that, then I also get to perform at my own ball. I'm allowing myself to perform. Both my wife and I are going to perform, get all dressed up and perform at the ball. So there will be some fire. But I did do some fire stuff at the summer solstice ceremony at Avebury. There are a lot of fire spinners out there.
Oh, lovely. And your wife does as well?
Yeah, I taught her how to eat fire, but she already knew how to spin fire. She spins hula hoops and staff and fans and palm torches that are on fire. So she does a lot of the flow arts, what they're called, with all the hoops and the staff. I mostly do fire eating and fire breathing, but I also spin the poi, which are like the little balls on chains that are on fire.
Poppy has a question, and I don't know if you're going to answer this question because I don't know if it's a state secret. How is fire breathing done?
Yeah, well, I guess I'd like to say as safely as possible, which there's really no way to make it completely safe because the fuel that you use is carcinogenic. So even putting it in your mouth, it gets into your bloodstream. It's not good for you. You start feeling really sick and gross afterwards. But with any kind of fire eating or fire breathing, if you inhale at any time, even just with the fuel in your mouth or out of your mouth with the flame, you can die. You just die because the vapors get in to your lungs and it's just not good. So you have to, I guess, just very safely, you put fuel in your mouth, a specific kind of fuel, and you have to exhale it in different ways depending on what you're trying to do. So you can do really crazy big, tall fireballs, or you can do really wide ones that are kind of closer to your face, or you can make it kind of like a candle, like a stream that's coming out, and you can try to maintain it for a really long time. So yeah, torch, fuel in mouth, and then you have to do these kind of breathing exercises to practice with water to get your diaphragm warmed up. But yeah, it's kind of how you do it. But it's really bad. I've done less and less of it as the years go on, just because I feel like it just makes me feel so gross. But it's really fun. It looks really cool.
It certainly does. And I imagine with your scuba diving experience and your ability to breathe and control your breath in the water, and to control your oxygen consumption with the tank on your back, if you're breathing something out, how long are you breathing out for? When you say for a long time, you're breathing.
Yeah. I've done an 8-second sustain. So a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, for 8 seconds, I've been able to hold a flame coming out of my mouth. So that's I think my record, but I've done some really big fireballs, which just happen all at once. And those are my favorite.
Wow. John has a question. How do you relate to the elements, water and fire? Because given that you love both of them.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I am curious about astrology, and I'm a Cancer, and most of my planets I have a pretty healthy blend of earth and air and water, but I only have one planet in fire. I think my Mars is in Aries. So which is supposed to make you work in very short bursts, and you spend all your energy very quickly and then have to recharge. And so I've been told that people who are lacking a certain element in their chart will often collect hobbies or something around the element that they're lacking to try to compensate for it. So someone told me that I do all this fire stuff because I don't have much fire in my chart. Maybe that's true, but I love all the elements. But I feel like I'm a very watery person. But then the intellectual, airy side, for sure, I get a lot in academia. My mind's always going and picking things apart. But the fire, I feel like I try to bring back into my life in interesting ways, like the fire breathing or the mixed martial arts. So I feel like to think at this point I have a healthy relationship with all the elements, but I'm always working on maintaining the fire rather than the bursts of it, if that makes sense.
I'm really intrigued at how deep you go into the fire to engage with. Blake says fire breathing, blame it on the birth chart. I love it, but that certainly making sure you're well compensated for the lack of fire in your birth chart. It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, obviously, I suppose maybe people who are pyromaniacs or I love fire, but I am fiery anyway. But it's really, really interesting the lengths or depths you go to connect with fire. So, yeah, John says I'm a fire and water person, but they manifest in very different ways to you, Austen. So, it's just absolutely fascinating. So Jamie says, I knew it was dangerous, but not how dangerous. Thank you for explaining this. Stay safe, both of you. Amazing. Good. There are other aspects to it apart from eating and breathing that. Amazing.
Yeah, it's cool.
When you've that fluid, I mean, obviously, if you hold anything in your mouth, you salivate. There's that. Okay, you're not to swallow. You're not to swallow, but you are salivating. So how do you manage not allowing? Because I know if you take a spoon of honey for a sore throat, the idea is you keep it in your mouth for as long as you can, and as you salivate, it just slowly washes the honey down to soothe your throat. How do you manage not to swallow anything? And not to
That's
salivate.
a good question. I don't know if I don't know. I'm sure some of it inevitably goes down. I just try to keep it in my mouth for as little as possible. So if I take my fuel, I close it, and then I just try to always be kind of continuously exhaling, even if it's in my mouth, and I'm not doing anything yet. To just constant. It's kind of scuba diving too. The rule of scuba diving is you never hold your breath. You always want to be exhaling a little bit. So I do that as well when I have the fuel in my mouth. But yeah, it does. You have to be very aware the whole time. There's been a lot of accidents that I've seen happen from people just having a few beers or just not. You got to really be in the zone.
Yeah. So Poppy says, I like Austen's look. He looks like a magus.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And Julia says, fire is the element I connected with the least. I dreaded it in the bardic grade. It's interesting. My big challenge was earth, even though I am very earthy, but in the bardic grade, I really struggled with my earth connection. But once I did, I was fine. But it's an interesting element. Okay. Blake says, I have a friend that did fire breathing 3 times a day on circus tour. He frankly said that everything tasted like styrofoam after.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Yeah, it definitely messes with your mouth. If you just makes your mouth feel really weird, and things do taste weird afterwards.
Yeah. just wonderful. And then maybe fire helps you alchemize the elements within you.
Yeah, I think that's true. I feel like even just working with the elements, if I'm needing to do, like if I'm going to work out or something in the morning, sometimes I'll visualize like a flame kind of growing inside me or things like that. So I feel like there's, druidry and just the idea of the 4 elements gives you can also create some interesting like rituals or visualizations or other things like to kind of help get you in the zone, like evoking air when you're needing to sit down to study or, things like that. So I feel like there's a lot of cool work to be done with the elements to depending on what you're trying to do or achieve.
Julia says she's the one who doesn't like fire, isn't it? I'm earth, water. I love this. Basically a muddy puddle. And Deborah says, some people tell me I breathe fire without the fire. Wink, wink. It's good to have an inner dragon, Deborah. Don't hold back. Actually, Gabriella says, maybe you don't lack fire, but have a special direct connect with it. And that may be so too in some way. Yeah. Well, obviously you have a very powerful relationship that a very respectful relationship with it. Yeah. So, any regrets?
I don't think I have any regrets. I feel like in my life, looking back, there's people that I've hurt on my journey that I wish I didn't. But at
Hmm.
the same time, that was also knowing that I did that was also fuel for me to continue to grow and change. And I like to think that having me be at where I was at in my life when I was in their life, and having them having to kind of deal with where I was at on my journey, has helped them move and grow and learn. And I've kind of like looked in on people on my past, that I was close with during those times, and several of them I'm like, wow, I could kind of imagine, wow, you probably wouldn't be like all the way across the other side of the planet, maybe if I hadn't been so. Yeah, I feel like I scared some people away. People are like, I just need to get away from here and this place and all this craziness. So I've had some friends like move and really do some dramatic things kind of with their life after relationships with me have ended that I've noticed. And they're all smiling in all their pictures and doing really well. And so I like to think that maybe I played some meaningful role in their journey in that way. So, but yeah, I don't want to say any regrets, but it does, like, if there are so many things I would want to say to so many people, and I have tried to connect with certain people in my past and be like, yeah, I'm really sorry for this or that, and the people, a lot of people have been really receptive to that and know where I'm at now, and know that the Austen that existed then, like, just couldn't even be where I'm at now. So I have to take where I'm at now as some evidence that something is significant has changed. Because yeah, so but yeah, so no regrets, but yeah, I know that people have been hurt, and that but at the same time, a lot of growth comes from that conflict. So um, I try to
Absolutely.
frame it as a good thing.
Yeah, and from the awareness of it, that
Mhm.
the awareness of any of the hurts that we cause people, I think is really, really important. Uh, Deborah says, I have chats to people in my past within the sacred grove. Yeah, I think that could be
Mhm.
really useful, Deborah, if you
Yeah.
can't actually meet them, or maybe they've passed on, or you can't actually meet them. That can be really, really helpful.
That's actually a really good idea. I might give that a try. There's definitely a couple people that I wish I could connect with that I can't. So maybe I'll have to give that a try.
Wonderful. Is there anything you change about your life now? Given that you've lots of changes, but maybe
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a
If I could wave a wand and make just anything about me different, it would be, I really do wish that it was easier for me to read. I would like to find a lot of joy in reading. It's something I continue to work on, and I always say it's something I continue to work on. And I'm not going to say like I'm not good at it, or it's I'm struggling with it. I like to say I'm just continuing to improve on my ability to read and enjoy reading. But it is a challenge, and I really love learning, and I love taking in new information. But just the reading, I wish I found as much joy in it, and found it as easy as some of my peers do. Because it's really not, and it's never been. And if I could change anything, I think that would be it. And if I could just open a portal to a mountain where I could snowboard to. I've been really missing snowboarding. I dream about it several times a week, but snowboarding and being able to read. Those are probably the only two things.
because yeah, obviously you're doing lots of reading for your studies, but actually reading for pleasure. Audiobooks. I've always said no, I'm not listening to audiobooks because my mind wanders all the time, and then I miss my point. But somebody gave me one for my birthday as a present, and it's nonfiction, and I listen to nonfiction on
No.
audio, and I'm actually just learning things because I wouldn't sit down and read them because I don't have time. So that I'm getting ready or I'm doing something, I can plug myself in. And actually, somebody gave I think it was Alan Hoskins gave the BBC audio link for the Philip Pullman Dark Materials trilogies. It's a
Wonderful.
trilogy
No,
for
I'll check it out.
you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I've been
because
doing a lot of audiobooks as well.
yeah, and if it would be nice to be able to read, and if you can't, when audio is there as well
Mhm.
to to have you discovered Terry Pratchett?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I have. He's hilarious. One of my buddies a while ago recommended him to me. There's a lot of books he's written. I've only read a handful, but yeah, I love Terry Pratchett.
Yeah, I only discovered him a few years ago, and I mean I'd heard about him, but just when there were discussions with friends as to whether I was Nanny Og or Granny So our Nanny Og or Granny Weatherwax, I thought I have to find out what they're talking about. So I thought he was just brilliant. He's one person I'd love to have met, is Terry Pratchett.
Yeah, it sounds like a really interesting human.
Now, I don't know what I'd have said to him. I think I'd have been awestruck, but I just thought just an amazing man, just absolutely wonderful. When you think of where we are in the world, what concerns you about the modern world?
Oh, so many things. I think othering is a big one. I think the way othering is a problem. I think that's kind of at the heart of really a lot of our problems. It's at the heart of a lack of connection, and the environmental crisis. There's where everyone's different. You can recognize difference in order to build a bridge, or you can recognize difference in order to other and like exploit. So like, a tree is other than, I can recognize that it's different than me. And because it's different, it has different needs, and you should probably treat a tree differently than you would treat a cat. You can recognize the difference in order to best know how to build a bridge and best know how to be in a relationship. And then there's the recognizing difference in order to other. And I feel like that's a big problem. And you see it. I feel like, the States is a very divided country.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we live in a divided world. But I feel you can really see it and feel it in the States. But, I notice the othering comes from all sides, and it really drives a wedge between people, and when bridges really need to be built. So I think that's the biggest problem. Yeah, is othering. And I'm not really sure exactly what the solution to that would be, but I guess just continuing to try to engage with others and build understanding and compassion and those kinds of things is great. But I feel like that seems like a hard task for many reasons. But I've always been interested in the other, of course, anthropologist, but the othering is really just a big problem.
I think it's been, for me, a source of pain, in these last 2 years, that othering and divisiveness. And I know from working with conflict management or conflict resolution, it's not until the relationship is really important, or you both sides recognize that we can't continue this, that we've too much to lose by othering or not appreciating the difference. And I think the isolation we've been living in for the last 2 years, just behind a keyboard, we don't see the other. Mm-hmm. It's just easy to lash out. And when we can actually be in physical connection, that does go some way. Though, families fight. So, mm-hmm. But when we recognize that we have too much to lose, not to share kindness and compassion with each other. It's a pity. Blake says, for 4 years we dealt with leaders who made othering the cultural norm, sadly. Yeah. And that may be in the US, Blake, but you know what? It's happening in so many other places now in these last 2 years, where the leaders in various countries are othering some member of the community or some half of the population because they're not, because they see things differently. And it's very, very sad. And I don't think we're going to survive. We have to recognize that it's not just about being sweet and nice, it's that we can't afford not to be kind and compassionate to each other, both for ourselves and for the other person.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I, even, it's like within the order, our ethos is to accept diversity. And it's something that we have to walk it as well, Mm-hmm. But each one of us needs to do that. It's not about expecting everybody else. That we all have a responsibility to engage with difference and welcome it and celebrate it rather than othering it. And all of us have that responsibility. But it's a painful one at the moment. So what gives you hope, if anything?
So yeah, that's a good question, because I feel like, one part of me is very logical, and when that part of me looks out at the world and looks at how things tend to unfold and how humans operate, it can be easy lose hope. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I don't really look at the news anymore. I know if it's important, my mom will tell me about it, or my wife, but I know that if I'm looking at it every day, I'll just bum myself out. I feel like it can be really easy to lose hope. However, I think, I don't know, what gives me hope is a lot of, there's been some like recent like art and I don't know, the one thing that comes to mind, I always say it, is Bo Burnham's Inside special on Netflix, who I take as kind of a modern bard. He's about my age, and he wrote, directed, and produced this kind of Netflix special during lockdown in one room, it's kind of been considered the document of the period. I can kind of see him as like a modern bard bridging worlds, but the fact that it was so well received and it seemed to strike a chord with so many people, it made me feel like, wow, people are really waking up to a lot of the problems that we have in the world today. So when I see, a song or art or anything else just seem to really hit people, that seems to speak to those kinds of issues, it just seems like more and more people are waking up to a lot of the problems and what's going on, and to see that happening. And see people kind of get fed up with a lot of things. And I mean, that gives me hope, because it is hard to be, I feel like, hopeful looking at things really logically. Sometimes I think things will have to get worse before they get better, but I do believe that they will get better. I think if everything needs to fall apart, okay, what emerges from the other side is going to be better. But yeah, seeing these kind of conversations being had with different people, kind of expressing the same concerns and the same thoughts, and kind of recognizing the same issues with the world, and seeing that pretty widespread, regardless of, political party or age or anything. It seems like everyone's kind of slowly starting to come onto the same page, and when that happens, I think a lot of change is possible. So that gives me hope.
Let's hope. Stephanie says, "All Eyes on Me" by Bo Burnham, something everyone should listen to.
Yeah. I think if it's on Netflix, and if you haven't seen the special, I really think that this is something everyone should watch. I feel like if you're probably, it ticks all the boxes if you're like an American millennial male, but I know that I would recommend everyone to check it out. I think he is a modern bard, and I think he's really giving a lot of voice to a lot of meaningful things. But you can listen to the songs individually, but if you watch the special on Netflix from beginning to end, I think it's well worth the time. It's hilarious, but also, like, you may have an existential crisis. Who knows? It's a really amazing work of art.
Okay, so you mentioned writing. You have a poem, don't you, that you'd like to share?
I do. I have, like I said, I have a journal of half-finished poems, but I do have one that I remember during an ayahuasca ceremony, because during ayahuasca ceremony you can come with a question and you can get very direct answers, which is, I've explored a lot of like psychedelics and other psychoactive substances in my life, which has been healing, but I've never experienced anything where you could come with a question and it felt like something outside of you is giving you a very direct answer. Very different from other substances where it feels like it's an internal change. But I came with a question to ayahuasca. I said, ayahuasca, help me can you help me to know myself? I had that intention. I drank the ayahuasca. I went to lay down, and the shaman started singing his Icaros, his healing song. And I looked over at my friend. I was feeling really sick, because you feel really sick after you drink it sometimes. And we both just started kind of moving to this song. And I don't know, eventually I just had this whole feeling come up in my body. It started at the base of my spine. And it felt like every bone and every fiber of my body was being outlined with energy. And it started creeping up my spine until it came over every tooth and every eyelash. I could feel it. And once it hit the top of my head, I had 4 snakes shoot out from the base of my spine start shooting up the walls, and all weaving in different Celtic knotwork patterns. And at that, and I don't know how else to, it's ineffable, but like poetry started coming from the walls, and like trees and plants were singing songs. It was, you know, I would consider that like the purest experience of Alwyn like I could have like ever had. It was just, it was crazy. It was intense. And right when after I had that experience, I remember, wow, this is me, and this is what everything really is, and I'm seeing myself and everything clearly for the first time. And then I remember at some point in the ceremony getting struck with fear, like, oh, am I going to lose this? Is this just going to go away and I'll be back to myself? And I ended up falling asleep, I remember, in that place of fear. And then waking up and immediately I just wrote this right when I woke up, just from start to finish. It just all came out. So this is the poem following that ceremony. It's nothing special, but it's the poetry of life, so simple yet it seems. Those who fail to live it must let their dreams be dreams. Its beauty holds no equal. 'Tis the law upon the land, the clouds from which the dragons shape the ground on which we stand. And who are we that find ourselves beneath the sands of time, to let the truth behind a twinkled eye unravel and unwind? So gather, brothers and my sisters, let us sing forgotten songs, and find we did not lose them, but knew them all along. For when my words are broken, and it is you that sings, remember life is nothing without the joy of being. So yeah, that was the poem that came right after that.
Wonderful, thank you. I mean, it's just a wonderful that description of these snakes doing this, and this like poetry coming out of the walls. Incredible. Wow. Just beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful.
It was an experience.
Oh, so what will you not compromise on?
Like, ooh, that's a new one. Not compromise on.
Yeah.
I honestly at this point I can't lie as a person. Like if I feel like I've said anything that's even just slightly dishonest, or like just not the whole truth, or something, it creates a weird feeling in my body that I just can't do it. So I feel like truth and integrity are just really important to me, and I don't want to compromise on those. And when I feel like I have no shame in being like, wow, I had a very human moment, and I'm out of integrity, or I didn't, I should have done this, I did that, I apologize. So I feel like I've come to that place in my life where I can do that, and I think that's a great place to be in. And if I step out of that even a hair, it creates a nasty feeling in my body that I just can't be with, and so I'll immediately do something to correct it. But I've been on that for a while, and that's something I just will not compromise on, which is interesting being in academia, because my supervisor can be warning me like, oh, they might not like this, or if you're saying this or this. I'm like, I don't care how. I'm aside from the scholarship from OBOD, which I'm very grateful for, I'm funding this with federal loan. So if I'm funding it myself, I will write and I will tell my truth. And if I'm, whatever that is, I'm not going to bend or twist something to appease, academia. I'm going to
play the game.
Yeah, I'm not going to play the game ever. No, I'm just going to continue to do what I feel is right, and just try to do everything with truth and integrity.
When I think you can come to that point in your life where you can trust that integrity deep within you, it's a great place to come, and a great place to operate from, even when all around you thinks differently, that you are able to say, no, this is my truth and I'm standing by it. Not everybody can do that. So I think when you can get there, it's reassuring in times of craziness and doubt all around you, that you have this center of not so much certainty, but certainty about your own voice and what it is you believe to be right for you. That certainty, not about certainty all around you, because none of us has certainty, but to be able to do that. Anne says, this is so good to hear of your firmness about academia and remaining true to your vision in your doctorate. I had to move continents in order to finish writing mine. Wow, Anne. Colleen says, always speak your truth. Blessed be. How very humble and noble to have a pure heart. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I think to be able to do that, I think is so, so important. Absolutely. So full of admiration for you.
Yeah, and I'm sure I will stumble upon my path, moving forward at some point in time. But I think it's not how you fall; it's how you pick yourself back up. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's always that questioning: Am I working with integrity, coming from a place of integrity? To be able to ask that question as you go along, I think keeps you. Keeps you grounded. I kind of think not quite in the straight and narrow. I hate the straight and narrow. I like the meandering roads and the spiraling roads, but that you have your own compass, and that's what's keeping you on the right path. Somebody wants to know where can they read your poem again?
Oh, I can. If you email me, I'll send it to you.
Okay, and I think Rosalvo asked that. I've put it's already in the chat. Austen's email address. Wonderful. Yeah, and Philippa says, belief in yourself regardless of others not agreeing. Absolutely, and it's holding on to that. And great. So Jamie says, the spatial beauty of poetry and its symbolism is more in sync, and online is really helpful. I relate to a lot of what you describe, including this about lies. I get in trouble a lot. Okay. Well, welcome to the club, Jamie. So, but to walk your own truth is wonderful. We're coming to the end of our time. So my last two questions are always, what is you may have already mentioned, well, you mentioned your first one, but what is your favorite season? And now that you're living in, I suppose maybe what's your favorite season in the US? What's your favorite season now that you're living in the UK? And what is your favorite ceremony to mark the wheel of the year?
That's a good question, because I used to always say I'm a winter person because that's when I get to go. But I realized after coming out here, it's because I would be able to go snowboarding back in the States. And snowboarding is what makes me a winter person. Going on the mountain, having a beer on the way home, and then winding down with some board games, and then rinse and repeating like the next day going on the mountain. Out here, I can't do that. And so I've realized the winters are actually quite hard. So I would say that out here, fall has to be my favorite season. The leaves still change. It's beautiful. I love all the big deciduous trees. So yeah, I enjoy fall out here, but where there's a mountain, winter, 100%.
And your favorite ceremony?
My favorite ceremony, gosh, I have to say Samhain. I know that's a popular answer on Fireside Chat, but it is a really, I think it's a cool time. I like the idea of the veil being thin and then going into the winter and the darkness and the fall. There's just a lot of things that kind of I think make Samhain really special. So I really always enjoy celebrating it. Great.
So, and it's just been an absolute joy talking to you, Austen, and you've been a wonderful guest. And of course, our viewers really enjoyed your story, and just being so open about your story and how you've, Tara says, thank you for such an inspiring conversation. You who have been so open about your own past, your own story, the pain, the chaos, and how you've come through that to be able to stand your ground, even if you can't snowboard. And it's just inspiring. So wonderful and great. So I've really enjoyed it. Somebody else asked, will I interview your wife next week? I've already booked somebody for next week. Hopefully that Birdie would like to come on at some point, that maybe we could have a chat. I don't know how.
I'm sure she would love that. Yeah.
Brilliant. So that would be, so Julie says, what an amazing young man you are, Austen. Many blessings on your journey. Thanks for sharing and your honesty. Great. So Austen, you say goodbye to everybody now, and I will just say goodbye to.
Yes. Thank you so much for everyone for joining and being with me, and for all your kind words too. It's been a joy. So many blessings to you all, and please send me an email if you'd like to connect more sometime.
That's wonderful. So you just go backstage, but hang on, and we will go through the comments together. I'll just say goodbye. So thank you all very much for your wonderful comments and joining in. Of course, you as the audience always contribute so much to these conversations and makes them enjoyable for me as well. So I look forward to seeing you next week. So enjoy the rest of your evening, your afternoon, your morning. And Just to remind you that we will be having our order Imolc ceremony at 7 p.m. Universal Time this Saturday on the same platform. So hopefully you'll be able to join us then. In the meantime, Slán go fóill.